Coming up on Currently, we'll talk about Munson recruiting nurses from the Philippines and new rules for septic systems in Grand Traverse County. Plus, Ed Ronco from IPR News will give us a sneak peek into a story they're working on for next week. And Beth Milligan has her Summer 2025 guide up next on Currently. Welcome to Currently, where we discuss some of the top local stories directly from the journalists who are covering them. I'm your host, Crystal Frost. It's a special Sweet 16 episode of Currently, and we are so very excited to be joined by Ed Ronco, who was here for our Terrible 2 episode of Currently. He's the news director for IPR News Radio. And as always, Beth Milligan, the head writer for Traverse City Ticker, is bringing her special brand of knowing how to explain very difficult things to people like me. Now, this podcast was recorded on Thursday, May 22nd at 5 p.m. Importantly, the Tigers are 33-17 and are first in the AL Central. That said, things may change by the time you're watching or listening. Now, support from Currently comes from Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings, located on South Garfield Avenue in Traverse City. It's home fashion elevated. And from West Shore Bank. When you choose West Shore Bank, you're not just choosing a bank, you're choosing a partner committed to the well-being of our community. Visit them today on 8th Street or at westshorebank.com. And from the Coin Slot Arcade Bar in Traverse City, it's a chill hangout with a full bar in a low-key setting. Well, friends, we're back.
I've liked that Ed's been here for the key developmental stages.
Yes.
The wonderful 2.
The wonderful 2.
And
you know, I got to tell you, as a parent, I am a parent, and it wasn't the terrible 2s, it was the terrible 3s.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, the 2s were like fine. Like it was a baby. It was not a big
You got to
deal.
have Ed back for, I think, 21.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do for 21?
I have an idea.
Drinks
or
on
2,
here.
yeah.
Yes, exactly. I like that. Well, I'm super excited to have both of you here in studio. We did have a plan to have like tiaras and sashes for Sweet 16, but unfortunately that plan was not brought to fruition. So I take full responsibility. You can't trust delivery, okay? You just can't. We're going to start things off with you, Ed, and I'm excited about this story just because I think it's very layered and it's really talking about a lot of complex issues when it comes to maybe nursing shortages, different solutions. But 170 nurses have been recruited from the Philippines. Munson is hoping to address that nursing shortage in the region. This is something that one of your folks wrote about, right?
Claire Keenan-Kurgan, yes. And what the status of this is that offers have been extended and accepted, and now they're working through the visa process, which is already complicated, but as you might imagine, under the current administration is also even further complicated with unpredictability.
Yeah. So let's talk about this agreement. In the story, President Laura Nilsson, who is with basically the Munson Nursing Association, it's the union representing nurses at Munson, they seem to be in favor of this. I mean, they recognize clearly the nursing shortage, but she had some concerns about just the focus on recruitment. She felt that retention efforts needed to move in tandem with recruitment efforts. So what is she hoping Munson will do to support nurses who are already here?
Yeah, I mean, the response from the nurses union was basically yay asterisk, right? Which is that yes, it's great that more staff are coming. Yes, we're welcoming new people into our team and certainly into the union because they'll be part of that collective bargaining agreement. But better staffing was a big deal and more retention efforts in that regard, more nurses on each shift, and more competitive pay. There are concerns about people who start work here and are quickly lured away by a more lucrative opportunity.
And it's not just the lucrative opportunities elsewhere. I think, we're no strangers to housing shortages, the cost of housing in this area. And I'm wondering, that being a barrier, I think, to some people who are local, who maybe want to stay in Traverse City and maybe want to work at Munson but can't, just literally can't find a place to live. What are they doing about housing all these 170 nurses potentially?
Yeah, I think anybody who hires in this region knows this pain of needing to find places to put people or help people find a place.
Sure.
And right now, there's nothing set up in regards to direct housing, but they have told us that they are exploring the possibility of what would that look like? How could we do that? We've heard that conversation too from school districts. We've heard that conversation from other industries in the region. And it's a tale as old as time, right? Because there were company towns back in the day when mills would have their own housing or whatever. So this is a conversation that's going to continue. Again, right now they're just working through the visas. We will see. The pay that the nurses who come in internationally will receive is going to be in line with that collective bargaining agreement. So they'll be earning what the other nurses there are earning. But how far that goes in this market is a conversation the union, I think, is eager to have.
And speaking of that pay, I think some people may be confused. These are not travel nurses.
Right.
These will be full-time staff members, staff nurses at Munson.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I did see some conversations bubbling up on social media about this. So glad to, kind of squash some of those rumors. Beth, you've covered housing for a long time. In your recollection, do you recall if Munson has ever thought about on-campus housing?
I mean, I don't know that they have necessarily the ability to do that. I mean, especially with the way their property is zoned. But certainly it's an ongoing community conversation. I think what stood out to me about the story that IPR did is, and you got a little bit of it in what we were just talking about with Laura, but, I think it's important for folks to keep in mind the context of what has been going on with, nurses and Munson. There have been some tensions in recent weeks. We had a story in the Ticker about, the union was very unhappy with Munson for what they felt was blocking their efforts to recognize nurses during Nurses Week. And so there was some comments made in the media, a little bit of snipping back and forth between hospital administration and the union. And there's also years of discussion about legislation to help cover nurses on shifts, make sure they're not overworked. These are ongoing conversations. So I think in light of that, I think that's why you can kind of reading the tea leaves of her comments to IPR is they are, of course, supportive of their fellow nurses. They want more staff. They need more support in the hospital. They don't want to be understaffed themselves. But I think there's also some frustration of, I think what Ed was saying, it's not just about getting people here. It's about making sure that they stay and they're taken care of. And that has been a bit of a sensitive point with the union, I think, for some time.
Yeah, I think Laura Nilsson had mentioned it. She has a new team of nurses every, 2 years, 1 to 2 years?
Yeah, she said she's been doing her job for 4 years. And in that time, it's turned over every couple of years.
Every year, wow.
At least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's just frustrating too, because you get into a groove, right? I mean, we all have coworkers, and you kind of get into the groove. You know who works well with this person or that person, and then you have to start over.
Well, especially in a medical setting where you have patients coming in and out all the time, and you need to have. I've had some experience watching this as the caregiver for my family members, that you have to have sort of a developed sense of rhythm and communication to really give effective care. And you build that up, and then all of a sudden you have to start over. I can see how that would be very frustrating.
I think we would be remiss if we didn't mention, too, the very real burnout from the pandemic. And I think, there were issues. I don't want to say that there weren't issues with staffing and Munson and maybe some of the nature working with the collective bargaining units, and then they're always going to be a little combative, but COVID hit and it was just unbelievable. So they still haven't really recovered in staffing when it comes to that.
Well, when you have an emergency like that too, that begins so suddenly, disrupts everything so instantly, and then lingers on and doesn't really have a clear ending, and some people would say still isn't over.
Right.
I mean, how do you recover from that, and how do you promise future workforce employees that it's going to get better, it's going to be better, here's what we're doing, because you just don't know.
Yeah.
And we've seen similar, a similar thing with teachers. There's also burnout in education for the same reasons the pandemic, because again, with our nurses, teachers, these are people who are on the front line having to deal with the masking regulations, being exposed themselves, having to deal with families and disappointing families, or families wanting access either to patients or to their kids at school or whatever it might be. I think we're seeing, certainly there's probably individual factors at Munson, but there's a larger picture in the hospital industry too.
Well, thank you for the story. Obviously, you can read all about it. You can listen to it as well at interlochenpublicradio.org. Stories called Munson Healthcare Hires 170 Nurses from the Philippines. You'll clearly be following up on this, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the best part of working in daily news. is
Yes.
You take a swing at it, then you get right back at the plate. Yeah.
And you do. I love it. Well, let's take a quick break and maybe call attention to our lead sponsor, Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings. And if you've been looking around your house at all of your furniture and all of your stuff and all of your decor, and it's just not bringing you joy, that's what I've been experiencing, I've got an idea for you. Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings' big Memorial Day sale is going on right now. It's your chance to save on all of the fresh new summer styles, and you can find that joy in your furnishings again. I'm a big fan of changing things out for the season, so even if that means like an accent piece, maybe for the summer, maybe it's a new rug or new pillows, or it could bring, maybe bring in a new chair in a fun, vibrant color. If you're looking for the chance to make a few small changes, or if you can change the entire feel and decor of your home, you're going to want to do that right now. You can have a fresh new reset with all new furniture or just a few new pieces from Golden-Fowler. This is the time to make it happen. With the big Memorial Day sale, you can save store-wide. And every qualified purchase comes with a brand new beach cruiser bike. How about that? You can brighten up your decor and get a sweet new cruiser to ride around town, along the beach, maybe in that new pump track, or just in your neighborhood. You can hurry in for the Memorial Day sale at Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings. That's on Garfield Avenue in Traverse City. It's furniture that you'll love to come home to. All right, welcome back to Currently. Now, Beth, we're going to skip over to you and to talk about something that really is going to make an impact on people, specifically people who live near any sort of water in Grand Traverse County. So,
which is a lot of us.
That's a lot of you. Yeah. So let's go into talking about how the County Commission approved new septic regulations. What happened there?
Yeah, so this is a big deal. This was approved Wednesday at the County Commission meeting. It will take effect on January 1st. So that's an important date for folks to keep in mind if you have a home in Grand Traverse County. The crux of it is, first of all, Michigan is the only state in the country that does not have a statewide septic code. This is obviously, given all of our fresh natural resources and our water, this is a challenge because when you have septic systems fail, they can often leak into the groundwater. They can pollute, your nearby waterways. So having, some way to regulate septic systems, which can sometimes be decades old, and we may not even know if we're not closely looking at them that they are leaking or they are posing environmental impacts. So the new regulations, because we don't have a statewide code, it's just been left up to individual counties, townships, whatever, to make their own rules. And Grand Traverse County, there's, talks eventually about that legislation coming to Michigan. Grand Traverse County is trying to get out ahead of that by starting to implement some regulations. And they wanted to have a countywide code so that townships didn't start creating their own individual codes.
Right.
And then what happens in Long Lake is different than Garfield or Peninsula. That gets really confusing for everybody. So this new regulation basically says that if you have a home or property within 300 feet of surface water, so surface water would be above ground. Okay. We're talking about lakes, ponds, streams, rivers.
Water you can see.
Water you can see. We're not talking about underground groundwater. We're talking about above ground water. If you're within 300 feet, if you are going to sell or transfer or convey your property to someone else, you have to have your septic system inspected. So it will undergo an evaluation, and it will have to be by a certified evaluator, which in the coming months now, ahead of this January 1st start, the county is going to be working on getting those, evaluators trained, getting this technology ready to go. And then, again, if you're going to sell it, you have to have the thing inspected. If it needs to be brought into corrective action, if it's failing, if it's leaking, if it doesn't look great, you have to provide a corrective action plan, and you have to complete those repairs within 180 days. And if you've got a sale like you want to get done, there's a surety deposit that you have to pay to ensure that those repairs are going to get done. You don't get that deposit back until it happens.
So I'm thinking about the 300 feet, and that's actually longer than you might think. So, I think we are automatically thinking people who live on the water. But this could be across the street. It could be a lot of people.
It could be. Now, what I will say is when they were working through the process of creating this ordinance, they had looked at different limits. They looked at 500 feet. They looked at 200 feet. They What they didn't want to do, they settled on 300 because that is probably going to be a couple hundred properties per year, which is a number of inspections that they felt that they could realistically implement. What the county didn't want to do is say, for example, and other counties have done this, every time every property in Grand Traverse County is sold, you have to have your septic system inspected. Wow. Many places do that. We didn't do that here to start because that would probably be overwhelming. We'd be talking about maybe thousands of inspections every year. And they didn't want to unfairly hold up the real estate market and put homeowners in a bind because they couldn't implement the own policy that they had, adopted. So this range was really meant to bring it into a narrow start to the program for the properties that would be the highest risk environmentally, the ones that are close to water. I think eventually when they get their sea legs and the program has been running and they have enough inspectors, they would potentially like to expand that program in the future. So more properties have to be inspected, but this is the start that we have.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm glad at least they're doing something that that is tangible for them to actually follow through with, though. And I think TJ Andrews had a quote saying something about, I don't want an ordinance without teeth, right? Like, we need to be able to do this.
I mean, I will say that the health department, and for folks who think, oh, I live by water, I want to know about this. If you go to the county's environmental health department page, they do have the new ordinance up there so you can look at the language. They define, how this is measured, how the steps work, how inspection works. I think you're right, though. What they said is, our goal is not going to be to immediately start jumping down homeowners' throats, giving them penalties and fees. Fixing septic systems are often expensive.
Yes.
They know that. There are some programs in the state that will help you fund or finance that. They said that their approach to the program is really going to be educating homeowners, helping them through the process, maybe connecting them to funding programs, and not to jump right to enforcement. But to TJ's point, if there's a property where there's a failing septic system and there's a river nearby and it's a real risk, they also want to have the enforcement mechanism so they can make sure that the environment is protected.
What are the local realtor groups, I think Aspire North and things like that? What do they think about this?
Yeah, Connor Miller from Aspire North has been at many of the meetings speaking on behalf of that organization. They have been heavily involved.
Okay.
In the coming months, the health department is going to be putting together their internal department guidelines of how this is going to be implemented. There will be parties at the table like realtors, Aspire North, the Watershed Center is also going to be at the table. So they have certainly had a voice in this process. They've been very proactive. I think, they understandably have some concerns about this slowing down or impacting real estate transactions. But the county has been very good about having them at the table.
Yeah, that's great. What do you think, Ed? Any advice coming from Ed Ronco about septic systems?
My rich expertise in septic systems. No, I think it is interesting to see that Michigan is the lone exception in the country to states that don't have statewide ordinances or rules. And also, this follows on the heels of, was it Leelanau County a few years ago? Benzie County back in 19, was it 90? I mean, it was a long time ago.
It was a while ago.
Yeah, so it's interesting to see how county by county these are starting to, to happen, and you wonder where's the critical mass where more counties are going to say, okay, it's time. Like, does this snowball into more of these counties doing?
Yeah, because there has been proposed statewide legislation, and there's a consensus, and I've heard this from both Republican and Democratic politicians. So I think there's momentum. I mean, it's odd that Michigan be the only state when we have so much water in the Great Lakes and everything. I think there's momentum. What Grand Traverse and other counties now are starting to do is say, if a statewide law comes down, we don't want to be caught off guard with nothing in effect. And then we have to go from 0 to 100 of ramping up and training people or, so this is like a transition into having something. Also, when you have something on the books, at least some of the state legislation that's been proposed before, they give you a lot more time to transition to the state. So you're kind of like, I'm going to just put this little placeholder program here. And that way, if the state comes along with a new law, they're probably going to give us more grace period to adapt to the new law.
Hi, well said. I mean, I'm glad I don't have to decide. Let me just say, I'll just sit back and let other people take care of it, right? We're going to move on to talking about summer because we are officially kicking off summer. It seems to be the official kickoff is always Memorial Weekend. And even though the weather might be a little chilly this weekend, you wrote up a beautiful summer 2025 guide that reads kind of like a summer bucket list, which is something that I make myself every year. I'm like, okay, things I have to do in a northern Michigan summer every year. So tell us what's on I'm going to call it the Beth Milligan Summer Guide.
Yeah, well, these are just fun to write. I mean, one for me, because yes, I'm excited about summer too. And then also, we cover a lot of hard news, and sometimes it's fun to just say, hey, we're going to go have some fun in the sun. So, I mean, just a couple highlights, and you can, find this on the Ticker's website, but we talk about baseball. You and I are huge baseball fans. I don't know if you're a baseball fan.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So in addition to the Tigers being amazing, of course, we have the Pit Spitters here in Traverse City.
Sweet Pit Spitters.
They have their home opener next Friday, May 30th. They'll have fireworks at the end of it. So if you don't have your tickets for the home opener, get those. We talk about some of the promo specials that they're going to be doing this year. Some interesting things with the ballpark, like the ballpark's going entirely cashless this year.
That'll be big.
So that'll be a change. And then, of course, we have an overview of some of the main festivals and events, everything from the Cherry Festival to horse shows, Interlochen Arts Festival. I have seen more and more, many of our local breweries, wineries, kind of outdoor venues are really getting into live music.
Yeah.
Every single night they've got a band going from Lake Ann Brewing to Seven Hills. We have all of those lineups included, the concerts on the lawn. And then we just talk about some other things like that folks like in summer, boating. We have a guide to plant sales and farmers markets. And then just stuff that's fun, ice cream, the Cherry Bowl Drive-In. Iconic Theater is under new ownership this year. They had their opening weekend last weekend. So if you like the old school, get the kids in the car, go watch the movies at the drive-in.
I basically grew up at the drive-in, and it was so wonderful. They did like a time-lapse video of them power washing the sign. And I watched it probably 35 times. It was just so great. I'm so excited about it.
That's out in your neck of the woods,
That's
from your childhood.
In my old school stomping grounds of Honor, Michigan, baby.
So this is, like you said, this is the weekend, Memorial Day weekend. And I would say, folks who like to go out in the patios, North Peak, downtown Traverse City opens up its patios. This is just the kind of time where folks tend to shift their hours for the summer. They're opening up and they're ready to go.
If you were a tourist and not a local, and you had to spend a day as a tourist with this summer guide, what would you pick?
Oh, honestly, because this is really focused on Grand Traverse County. If I was a tourist in Traverse City, I'd probably go to Sleeping Bear for the day. Maybe walk downtown Front Street, and then maybe the Commons. Like those are my top three places in town.
How about you, Ed?
I think I would pick a day thing and a night thing. So I would go go out on a boat all day. As much time as I could spend out on the water. The Naughty Cat or something. And then hit the Cherry Bowl. I have never in my life been to a drive-through movie.
Oh, you got to do it.
And this is the summer.
Okay.
It's going to happen.
Listen, we're going to do currently from the Cherry Bowl then, because I think that would be amazing. Yeah. We'll just do it right up there. There's like a little stage. It'll be fantastic. I'm so obsessed with the Cherry Bowl. It'll be great. Very cool. Thank you so much for that guide. And, before we go, I did want to give a chance for you, Ed, to do a little sneak peek on a story that Ellie Katz is working on for next week. And this is a story that's near and dear to me because I just think that the DNR does so much more than issuing hunting licenses. And Beth and I have covered this in the last few months with the help of other guest journalists, just talking about how does the DNR pay for all of the things that it does with a budget based on hunting and fishing licenses. And when we know that the number of licenses, the purchases are going down. Right. So one of the things was to increase that price. So one of the, a lot of people don't like that.
Right. That's not a terribly popular idea. No.
It's really, especially if the conservation, if what the DNR is doing is so much more than, surrounding hunting and fishing, and it benefits so many people, why are we putting it all on the backs of hunters and fisher people? Right.
We've explored some of those questions in previous stories, and for sure this is a debate that comes up anytime somebody even says the word hunting license fee, right?
Right.
This question arises, and one of the things that's happening right now is a story we'll report next week. Ellie Katz is working on this, and she's been following DNR issues for a while for us now. There's an idea that maybe if the state were to loosen restrictions on deer baiting, that there would be a little more political will to talk about raising those fees. That you might be able to get lawmakers behind that notion, because deer baiting has its supporters and detractors.
Yes.
Which is just for folks who don't know, like leaving a big pile of food out to attract deer and make it easier to hunt. So this conversation's starting, and we have a story exploring the pros and cons.
Yeah.
One hunter we talked to said, look, I can grow a field of food and that is legal.
As long as it's in the ground.
How is that any different, he asks us, than putting out a big pile of corn?
Yeah.
Right? So that's an interesting question. There's also science that points to real concerns about deer density, and the more those deer get together, the easier it is for them to spread chronic wasting disease. And we hear from Wisconsin in this story too, where 20 to 40% of the deer there have chronic wasting disease, and they have seen this problem. And what's their advice for Michigan?
So you're saying when baiting occurs, it's more likely that, they're hanging out at the buffet and they could be getting chronic wasting. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And is there a risk?
I didn't even think about
therefore?
that.
And so the question becomes, does the short-term gain cause a long-term devastation?
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting.
I have a few hunter friends who are adamantly opposed to baiting, and only because they just think it takes out the sport of it.
Mhm.
When you have maybe a herd that's getting used to being fed at a certain place, it's just like, where's the sport?
Mm-hmm.
But if you've ever been hunting, like I have my whole life, and you're just waiting to see something, maybe you want a little bait.
Yeah. Yeah, and the hunting community certainly doesn't speak with a single voice, so that's also been
True.
interesting to explore.
Yeah.
People hunt for different reasons, different things they get out of it. So we'll see.
Very, very true. But before we go, I have to ask you both, what are you looking forward to in the coming week? I want to just put it out there that it is Memorial Weekend, and my husband and I in the past few years have launched a really tiny annual summer launch party at our house. We get the backyard ready. We just have a few friends over. We have some hot dogs, always a good time. And it feels early this year. I was like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to host people, but I'm excited about it.
Well, I was driving to work this morning and I turned on the seat heater and I thought, it is May 22nd. Yeah. So yeah, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking forward to. We're going to try something new at IPR. We're going to ask an expert. We're launching an event that might turn into a series. We don't know, but we've brought up an expert from the University of Michigan. We're going to gather a community at the Botanic Garden next week and talk about climate and what climate and community, how they intersect, what kinds of questions people have, and just a pretty informal conversation. So I'm really excited about that. I know it's a work thing, but I'm pumped.
Oh, I'm excited
Yeah.
about that too. Oh, I have so many questions
Yeah, right.
about gardening. I'm like, why? Beth, what about you?
Well, Memorial Weekend, I'm excited. The weather looks nice this weekend. The weather looks really nice next week. So I think we're finally going to get more into the summer temperatures. But the Coin Slot, one of our supporters of the show, but also just genuinely the place I hang out most of the time, has their anniversary party tomorrow. So there's going to be live music.
Nice.
There's going to be a pinball tournament. There's going to be people hanging outside the patio in the sun, ice cream, tacos, all the things.
Ice cream. You mentioned ice cream.
Yes.
Now, speaking of ice cream,
Yes.
we have a very, very special treat because the Coin Slot is actually launching kind of a sister project called Super Cone, and it's going to be custard and soft serve and all the best stuff. And I believe, I'm looking at my producers, my line of producers, I believe they are here. Oh, this is happening in real time. Scott Pearson, come on.
Yes. What?
Stickers.
You sold us a Snickers.
Oh my gosh. Look
Thank
at
you.
This is very exciting.
Excellent.
This is incredible.
Best day ever.
Thank you.
Mhm.
This is amazing.
So come on over here, Scott.
Slight melt, so don't stress.
Can you just sneak over here and maybe crouch down a little?
Sure, you can crouch. Like a coach.
You're like the coach. You're giving me some
me know what you
some
think.
advice.
Sounds
This is
delicious.
amazing. Tell us what is this custard?
Frozen custard, yes.
I love it.
But just vanilla frozen custard with the candy mix-ins.
And Super Cone, when does it open?
About 24 hours.
So by the time you're watching or listening, it's going to be opening today.
Yeah. Memorial Friday, we're actually going live, and then we're kind of tweaking as we go.
I am obsessed. Thank you so much. This is fantastic. Oh my gosh. Scott Pearson, owner of Coin Slot and
Congrats.
Super
Good
Cone.
luck.
It's
Yay.
amazing.
All right, let's finish it up. Thanks to Beth Milligan and Ed Ronco for yet another wonderful show. We're back next week with brand new local stories to share. You got to be sure to subscribe to the show on all of the platforms at crystalfrost.com. Follow us on social media and subscribe to Currently with Crystal Frost wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch the full show on YouTube and Facebook. Currently is a Compass local podcast produced by Pancake Boy Productions. Big thanks to our lead supporter, Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings, in addition to the wonderful West Shore Bank and the Coin Slot. And speaking of, check out Super Cone. It's delicious.
This is
Cheers.
delicious.
I love ice cream.